I am so glad you're here. This Tuesday, we're going to address universal values, which is a key to the Universal Peace Federation, or UPF, our sponsoring organization. UPF is an NGO in over 180 countries around the world. It's in general consultative status with UN's ECOSOC branch. This is the academic pillar of UPF, the Academic Association, the International Associations of Academicians for Peace, founded by Dr. Hak Ja Han Moon, often called the Mother of Peace. And as we go through these excellent presentations today, I'm really looking forward to it. I would encourage you to keep muted, and also if you haven't, or when you have questions, feel free to type your questions in the chat, and we will do our best to get to them at the end. And the first panelist is Tobias Wängbert, and you saw his title and position in the flyer, and I'll put the bio in the chat that you can reference it as we go on. So Tobias, so nice to see you here, or Tobias, nice to see you here. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Staffan. So let me begin by sharing some slides with you. There we go. Okay, so thank you so much for the invitation to speak here today. I'm really happy for this opportunity and grateful to you, Staffan, and everyone involved in organizing this event, which I think is a really interesting topic for me, and also very relevant and important topic. My background is in mathematics, mainly, and I'm currently doing a PhD in philosophy. So this is sort of the angle at which I'll approach this topic from. And it's, I of course don't have all the answers to these questions, but I'll share my perspectives, and I hope that this presentation will be a good starting point for discussion later on, which I'm very much looking forward to how that will unfold. So I'd like to start here by moving back a few centuries in history to the philosopher Immanuel Kant. And here I'm not doing justice to all of his philosophy. You can write books about that. But he has had a very large influence on how we think about reality in our culture today, which has relevance how we relate to our thoughts, our feelings, spiritual experience, and so on. Because Kant really struggled with reconciling how to deal with our subjective experience in here and the objective reality out there. And according to Kant, where he sort of got stuck was that he related to thoughts, feelings, spiritual experiences as humans' constructs. It's something that exists only within our own brain. So the experiences we have in our psyche is something that is produced somehow by our cognitive machinery. And this is the only thing we have access to our subjective experience. It's caused by some external world out there, but we cannot really know this world. So this has had a very big impact on how we think today. So this has a really large effect on our culture in many ways. Here are some of them. This bifurcation between our inner world and the world out there. Because there is this that can seem really mysterious, is that we have thoughts and feelings appearing within ourselves that are only accessible to me. And then there is the objective world outside with the stars that we can all look at and share immediately the experience of. So how do we reconcile that? But this bifurcation, that there is this objective world, which we cannot know, and then there is the experience inside of our head that we experience, but is not directly related to external world, has a lot of consequences. So I think one of them is that a lot of resources of great value, I think, or in my, such as energy healing that I know that Staffan knows a lot about, or mediumship that I heard Claire is gifted with this talent, are just immediately discarded as pseudoscience or fraud because of this materialistic worldview that we hold. Self is that we have a lot of difficulties today relating to ourselves and to our inner life. We can feel very alienated, like our experiences don't really have anything to do with true reality, our feelings and so on. So if we experience, for example, pain in our body, we take a painkiller to remove that pain instead of listening to that pain and asking maybe something is the matter and investigating that. So I include here this famous painting by Edvard Munch, The Scream, which I think can really depict how a lot of people can feel today. And I think a root cause is this materialistic philosophy that we hold. We're also out of harmony with the external world. We see that in the way we treat the planet with the climate destruction going on today. And furthermore, there is, in this philosophy, difficult to justify how you can have any genuine knowledge, for example, in ethics about values. And we see that human judgment, which we use to decide ethical questions, are replaced by abstract theories and ideals. And in the 20th century, we see the consequences of that with these horrible wars that humanity has gone through. So I think there's really something very important about addressing these philosophical root issues. So, as I said, my background is in mathematics, and mathematics was a big reason why I really started to question these materialistic assumptions. And I know that Laurel will give a lot more reasons in her presentation, but I will focus on this here. So mathematics is this special field where we are relying entirely on our inner faculties, intuition, imagination, and so on. Yet it is regarded as a field where we can attain certain knowledge. And I think this is mainly because of its relationship to physics, which is regarded very highly in our culture today. But when you think about mathematics, I think that you could liken, so they are very different, but a mathematical proof could be in some way likened to religious contemplation or religious rite even. So if you think about the experience of mathematics, if performed correctly, a mathematical proof leads to an inner truth experience. A spiritual rite, if performed correctly, can lead you to an authentic spiritual experience. But we trust mathematics, but we don't really trust religious contemplation to give us knowledge. And I find an inconsistency there, pointing to that there's something off with this philosophy that we hold in our culture today. So I think that it's really important that we move towards a post-materialist worldview, and I think I'm not alone in this, and that we move towards acknowledging also that we can have a spiritual science, that it's actually possible to attain knowledge about spirituality. It's not just something that is limited to my subjectivity. So it will also be a lot that can be said of what this post-materialist worldview would look like. And I definitely don't have all the answers here again. But I think that how we relate to thoughts, feelings, or intuition, imagination is not something that is just something that happens within the human psyche, that is produced by our own cognitive machinery. It's something more like perception. My thinking, and this is how I experience that, is that I perceive thoughts. I don't construct them. And this also, I think, explains better how mathematics works, because there, when I look within myself, I discover truths that are transpersonal. I'm studying something that is bigger than myself, that I discover within myself. So it's something without, extension in space that I study, that has, and art, music, and myth can help us to get to know the world. They're not just entertainment, which is the view in our culture today. So our inner subjective experience is a trustworthy source of knowledge we can scientifically study, is a proposal I want to open with here. So I'm running out of time, but I will, sorry, my computer is slowing down a bit. But my presentation is almost done. I wanted to end with a quote by the philosopher Alfred North Whitehead, which goes something like, I hope you can see the slide soon. Ah, here it is. Oh, there it went. So I'll just end there. I'm sorry I'm running out of time here, but when you understand all about the sun and all about the atmosphere and all about the rotation of the earth, you may still miss the radiance of the sunset. And I think it's something very important in this quote, because we try to understand the world always through abstract theories and complicated machinery, but we forget that our subjective experience of the world also has great value for getting to know the world. So I'll stop there, and thank you so much for your attention, and I'm very much looking forward to the discussion now.
Thank you very much, Tobias. Thank you for sharing those deep thoughts. And to make a joke, I don't know, some of the people in our audience might not have so much experience of truth in relationship to math, but falsehood. They're marked wrong on their test. Yeah. That's another point, okay? Anyway, now we're going to move on, and all you have any questions relating to Tobias, please put them in the chat. I would appreciate that. We're going to move on to our second panelist, Laurel Waterman. She is an amazing lady, and she has had a similar path in a sense as Tobias, in coming out of a scientific background with all the materialistic rigors it entails, and then finding herself suddenly feeling that wasn't satisfactory, that wasn't enough. And I really appreciate you here, Laurel. Your bio is in the chat, and without further ado, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Staffan. I'm really honored to be here. Are you seeing my slides okay there?
Yeah.
Yeah, and you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So thank you so much for having me. And I'd like to acknowledge that I'm going to present a little bit about my doctoral research. I'm also a PhD candidate in education, and I've got a grant that I'm going to acknowledge as supporting my research, which excites me because this very conservative granting body saw value in teaching about alternative perspectives on consciousness. So I think we're really at the beginning of a sea change here. Oh, my slide did not change. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to share a long story, kind of a 2-year long story, very, very quickly. In my mid-30s, my worldview transformed from what I didn't know was called scientific materialism to post-materialism. And it happened through the tragic sudden death of my husband, which led me to become curious about what we understand about consciousness. I had assumed that it was created by the brain and that science knew this and this was a proven fact. But when I looked into it, that's not at all the case. And I discovered many anomalies that cannot be explained by that theory. I also had some of my own experiences connecting with what I now call consciousness beyond the brain. And I've published a piece on that in the International Journal for Transformative Research. So if you want more detail about the experiences, you can ask me later or you can go ahead and read that. I want to talk about how this led me to a PhD because I felt miseducated by my formal education. Why were none of these anomalies or alternative theories ever included? So I went to do a PhD to sort of look at how we can shift that. And I've termed this field of inquiry consciousness education, exploring perspectives on the source of, and nature of consciousness and their implications for ways of being, knowing, teaching, and learning. I'm not going to go into these anomalies, but in case you're going, anomalies, what do you mean? Here is a list of many, and each bolded line is of rigorous research, lots of high quality research that shows that these phenomena are real, right? Tobias mentioned, usually they're just dismissed, fraud, not real, can't be. But there's enough evidence now and enough different buckets that we're making a waterfall here of anomalies. And with Kuhn's paradigm shift, this is the tipping point. This is the time. So if we take these seriously, how do we integrate them into education? And if we take these anomalies seriously, I think that they flip a lot of the epistemological assumptions of the dominant worldview. So, for example, just taking thoughts and the relationship between thoughts and matter or brain and mind. We assume that thoughts do not and cannot alone directly influence material reality. Thoughts cannot be communicated without use of the 5 ordinary senses. We assume the brain produces mind, which is the source of intelligence, creativity, problem solving, emotion, and all of our identity. And that anything without a functioning brain does not have consciousness. But if we actually look at the implications of these anomalies, what they're showing us, it flips it. Thoughts can influence material reality sometimes, maybe all the time. Thoughts may be communicated without the use of bodily senses, such as telepathy. Mind exists, perhaps even originates from beyond the brain and the body, and consciousness can exist or survive without a functioning brain. So how do we start to teach about this stuff? And how do we stop reproducing those old assumptions in our educational paradigm? So this is what my research looks at. I'm doing a narrative inquiry with 9 scholars about their experiences teaching about alternative perspectives on consciousness other than materialism in university settings. And I have 9 participants. I don't have time to go through each of them, but there's a very brief summary. They're from diverse places, diverse philosophical orientations, different disciplines. 3 are Indigenous scholars. And here are some of my preliminary findings. I am in the process of writing my dissertation right now. So this is pretty hot off the press for you. So very quickly, just some things that I'm noticing as I analyze the data. They have different approaches, the 9 of them, but they tend to fall into sort of 3 different areas that they foreground. Some of them are data driven. And it depends on who they are and how they came to understand about consciousness and what disciplines they're teaching in. Others foreground culture and cultural values and assumptions and beliefs. And then others go into kind of core identity, like probing into the student. Who are you? What is your truth? What are your gifts? What are your passions? Where does creativity come from? Things like that. So 3 different approaches. They all value subjective experiences more than you would assume is happening in higher education settings in most cases. And they validate these experiences and encourage students to share them through class discussions or writings and reflective writing. The relevance piece is really important for everyone. They're interested in connecting the content of the course to students' lives and lived experience. And, what does this mean for you about how you go about living and being in the world? They use a variety of tools, and this varies a lot. And it can either be in their personal practice as a teacher to prepare for the course, or even within the course, they can bring in things like meditation, ceremony, ritual. Some even teach self-hypnosis to students to increase their skills with their own understanding of their consciousness. And a time in nature, and with nature, that's foregrounded a lot, especially by the Indigenous scholars. They all also noticed and commented on how students are inherently interested in this subject matter. So I think that's relevant. It's lighting up these young people to think about these alternative ideas. Also, several of them said something to the effect of, you can't tell people what to think. So instead, they're working on leading students to do their own research, to draw their own conclusions and interpretations of the material. And then they also all talked about what I'm calling a sense of spaciousness in their teaching, this sense of teaching with consciousness, letting consciousness teach through them, bringing in synchronicity, etc. I've also found some preliminary challenges for consciousness education, such as fear, lots of reasons to fear doing anything different in our academy these days. Sense of certainty, especially amongst academics, not so much again with students, but their colleagues or administrators when they're trying to push through kind of new content. There's some resistance. People feel they know everything they need to know. An epistemological bias toward cognitive ways of knowing over any other ways of knowing, and an ontological superiority of science as the harbinger of truth comes through as well as a challenge. And then integration is challenging. What does it all mean and how does it affect our lives? So I'm at time, but I just want to leave you with some takeaways for the values that I think we're trying to shift education to include some of these ideas, which lead to the conclusions that there is meaning and mystery in the universe, right? It's not just random accident that we're here and this isn't our only shot at it. We are all interconnected in a field of non-local consciousness, and we have ways of tapping into that to use that for well-being for everybody. And there are different ways of being beyond the way we are right now with, capitalism and patriarchy and all of those types of relationships. It's not the only way. So what happens when we view our experiences in material reality through this lens? And that's what I like to explore. Thank you so much for listening. Sorry, I went 1 minute over. I'll stop sharing.
You did awesome, Laurel.
Thank you so much, Staffan.
Very good.
Yes, I'm sure our audience have many points of interest or contention, maybe even in your presentation, with especially as you challenge traditional views. And that's great. And bring them on, put it in the chat. And just for further reading if you like, Laurel's, one of her papers I put in the chat there you can find out a little bit more. The reference is there. And if you search her name, you will find more as time goes on, same as with Tobias. So now we have heard from two people who have had somewhat of transformative experiences, making them to take a brave step to break with traditional academe. And we're going to have a comment from a wonderful lady who has had that awareness of another reality or some deeper sense of interpersonal relationships that is not given to many of us. And I am so curious to hear from our next panelist, Claire Daugherty here, if you can put her on the screen and give us some insight, please. We who are still in the dark. Thank you.
Well, I thank you for inviting me, Staffan. I feel a little bit out of my league. I am not an academic. I was quite a late bloomer. I didn't finish my undergraduate work until I was almost 50. But I am a practicing medium. I am a psychic. And the post-material reality is the reality that I live in. People contact me from literally all over the world. I don't have any clients in Antarctica, so it's not all over the world, but every other continent, I do help people who need reconnection with loved ones who have left this physical reality, who, for many different reasons, they contact me. And the non-material world is as real to me as the computer that I'm using to speak with you. It's something that I experience day in and day out. And it is something that, because I have this ability, it was a gift. And I do have a Christian background, and I remember the parable of the talents. And when God gives you a gift, it's for you to multiply and use it to build a better world. So I do use my gift in that sense. But I have seen over and over again, when I act as a go-between between the physical and the spiritual world, often to comfort people who are grieving, or people who have some unfinished business, maybe between a parent and child that perhaps has been in the spirit world for decades. The person who is no longer in the physical realm still very much has a consciousness and is able to communicate to me, not so much using words, it's much more through emotions and visual images, things about their life, perhaps things about their relationship with the person who has asked for the sitting, that are what we call evidential. These are things that are very real to the physical person on the other side, sometimes very private and unshared aspects of their life that nobody would have any access to except perhaps the person that I'm bridging with. So the non-material world is real, I promise you. It's very real. It's more real than this material world. It's much more intense because it is a world centered in the heart. It's not centered in the brain. It's not about ideas, theories, concepts. It's about lived realities. I can talk and talk and talk and talk, but I won't, I promise. I want to leave time for the questions and answers. But I do assure you, everyone listening, that we are on a cutting edge of new research that will prove the existence of consciousness beyond death. Younger children are being born that are far more sensitive than certainly my generation or my children's generation. There is a huge shift taking place. The levels of consciousness, the non-physical dimensions, which includes those who have passed on, who have completed their lives on earth, and other spirit beings such as angels, who never had a physical experience as we do in a flesh body, but they very much do have a consciousness, and they are more and more able, for many reasons, to connect with us in the physical realm. And I think those who pursue this research will be assisted very much by the higher consciousness of the other side. And as I said, that includes people who have completed their lives on earth, as well as I'll call them the heavenly host. I'm really into angels. My license plate says Angel Lady, and I've traveled. I've really lost track, but I think it's 40 countries, giving a very simple little workshop on Angels 101. You know, how to invite angels into your life and work with them, how to create teams of angels to help you go beyond your own material limitations, because they can do all kinds of things that I can't do. So I like to designate things to them. I think I've used up my time, and I don't know if I've clarified anything, but please feel free to ask questions. The spirit world is real. We're much more than just this material dimension. And I do believe that the next thing we're going to see in mainstream medicine, I'm not talking about alternative medicine or spiritual healing, we're going to learn about the human electrical field. And it's very much part of the physical material world. We don't understand it yet, but we're going to treat illness without even having to touch the body, by balancing and correcting the outer layers of our physical form, which are energetic. Again, I'm not talking about spirit, I'm talking about part of our physical reality. And I've been told this from the other side for about 3 years, but I'm starting to see it popping up all around me. Right in the town next to me, we have one of the franchises of a device called the harmonic egg. And if you're curious, check it out. And that is just the beginning. There are other devices like that work with frequencies that can heal us and strengthen us and restore us to physical health. So I think I'll end on that. I don't want to take more than my fair share of time.
Thank you, Claire. Well, if you live like you, very consciously in the space of eternity, and then maybe it's a different dimension. So we appreciate you here. Now, Tobias is also on the screen. That's great. And Laurel is coming here. That's wonderful. And we have a kind of a separate program being going on as you've been speaking, because Tobias was first. There have been some questions in the chat, and the first ones are, of course, to Tobias, because you were the first one who gave them opportunity to ask questions. Do you see them, Tobias, or shall I read them out to the audience here?
Let me see if I can scroll back.
Let me read the first one here. Dr.
Okay, thank you.
Maria Kiley. Thank you, Tobias. Inspiring. I suspect secular scientists shackle the scientific method by insisting on material result. Why not apply it to subjective experiences as long as that experience is repeatable?
Yeah, thank you for that comment, and I completely agree with that. I find that there's such I mean, it's not really rational how the scientific community operates often, I think, because I think this is exactly what mathematicians do, and we accept that for some reason. But as I touched on in my presentation, so much other fields of knowledge that are of such value that I experienced in my life, how much help it has been for me to lead my life in a better way, to open up, to seek guidance from mediums, for example, and just how I relate to life in general has helped me on a personal level. So I think it's something that has a lot of reasons, but one of them perhaps is sociological. But in my view, it's not rational, definitely. So thank you for that comment.
Okay, Tobias, any of the other panelists like to comment on that, Laurel or Claire?
I think Tobias covered it pretty nicely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's go to the next one. It also says Tobias, of course. One of the biggest philosophical inquiries is that of probability in reality. What do you think is the nature of quantum phenomena? Is it really probable, or is it just the closest mathematical description of those processes, which are, though with unfathomable amount of parameters, kind of deterministic? So what is it?
I mean, I don't have a definite answer to what's the correct interpretation of quantum physics. But what I would say is that definitely the results of quantum physics really shows that this mechanistic materialistic paradigm doesn't work to understand reality. So we really know that from quantum physics. Then how to interpret that is another question. I think it's interesting I have been learning a lot from Roger Penrose, who discusses this a lot, and he said that there's this paradox in quantum physics with Schrödinger's cat that is both dead and alive, and that really points to that there's something that is incomplete about this theory. I think, in my personal opinion, what I take away from this is that the mechanistic view is wrong, but the mathematical theories, I don't think that we will really get to know the world that way. I think it's really what Claire touched on, that everything that we construct only in our head, we won't really access reality directly that way. There's value to that. But it's really through our direct experience. So I think, like, when we reason about probabilities and so on, they can be helpful to navigate our experiences, but it's also easy to get stuck in that kind of abstract thinking, which leads to a lot of paradoxes. I hope that gave some sort of meaningful answer to your question, even though I don't have complete knowledge about quantum physics.
Ooh, complete knowledge is a very high bar to aim for. It's like God. Anyway, thank you. You know, for us, it's I think I speak for most of the people in the audience. There's so much math involved in quantum field theory, so we get a little bit intimidated. So have somebody who has certain experience in the field of math translate and explain to us, is give some kind of confidence to us. You know, so I appreciate that. Thank you for your comment and helping us along. I like to go to Laurel. You had a quote about quantum field theory. I don't know if it was in this edition of your PowerPoint or earlier one. It said it was quoting Baruch and Mossbridge in 2017, which dismantles materialism's assumptions of reductionism, determinism, mechanization, scalability, and absolute time and space, which is quite a mouthful and a tall order, but basically it just shatters the whole thing. You know, you have like, you know, a minute to help us shatter.
Oh, I mean, it's not my area of expertise. You know, before I started doing this, I teach creative writing before I got into this PhD. But that book, Transcendent Mind by Mossbridge and Baruch, is wonderful. And I think that, you know, we really haven't integrated the significance of the quantum revolution yet in any aspect of how our society runs, in our institutions, definitely not in education, not even in physics. But it's undeniable. And I mean, everyone now knows it's there. And it's, you know, it's a similar thing with all the anomalies, right? All the other ones, the kind of what we call parapsychology. So we don't have to look at it and we can just go on with normal psychology. It's a similar thing. And what I take it as is it means that there is mystery. We do not have it all figured out yet. I think one of the biggest problems in our education and in our culture is that we value knowing so much over the beauty of not knowing. It's okay to not know everything. We don't know everything. How can we be comfortable with that? How can we use that as an invitation, right? To live more fully, and to come to know our own through our own experience. I mean, I find it exciting, but I don't have the answers.
Sorry. Thank you. We have another, I'm jumping to Pierre Beauregard here for your Laurel. Considering that science is starting to accept ideas pushing us towards a post-materialistic paradigm, what would be a concrete example of positive changes towards a peaceful world we can reasonably look forward to? A peaceful world, that sounds good to me. We need some.
Yeah. I love that question. The final slide that had too much text on it, and I didn't have time to read all of it. I talked about a term, or there's a bullet on a term, interconnected relationality. And I keep coming back to that. I first read that from an Indigenous scholar in New Zealand, Eileen Moreton Robinson. And in her explanation of that idea, she says, I am worth no more and no less than any other living thing or any other living being. And when I first read that, I got complete chills, because if you think about how revolutionary an idea that is in our current, you know, social, political, economic context. I mean, we are valuing ourselves, measuring our own value against others and other humans, other species, nature. And we definitely think we're more valuable than other people on an individual level and on a species level. But if we really think about the implications of interconnected consciousness and expanding understandings of consciousness beyond the human brain, we become, I mean, I'm not saying that humans are not special. You know, I think we do have a special awareness. But with that specialness comes a lot of responsibility. And so what I would like to see, you know, what I hope is that this shift will lead people to feel more connected and more compassion and empathy, and be more aware of their actions and their effects on others.
Thank you. Sensitivity, nature. Yeah. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. I'm quickly going to jump to a question here from Diane Hickler. My husband has been in the spiritual for 7 years. Okay, it must be for Claire. And I'm working on an ongoing relationship with him. What do you think of this?
I think it's very natural. And I think that he's probably just as eager to communicate with you as you are to hear from him. I do find this when I facilitate meetings between heaven and earth, that the people in the spirit side are delighted to have the chance to communicate directly and clearly. And I think that working on it yourself is a great idea because you have a bond of love with him. There is a history between you, so there's already an energetic link. And a lot of it is about just learning to listen. And we have different languages. So some people will experience it as a voice, some will experience it as a feeling, some will see synchronicities or little signs. But just listening, I think, is very, very important. And as I said, consciousness continues. And I don't know if anyone saw the movie Ghost, but in the final scene, the man comes to the woman he loves and he said, all the love, you take it with you. And I find that to be very, very true. And those bonds of love last throughout eternity. And that communication can be nurtured, even though one is in the earthly realm and one in the spirit realm.
If I can just jump in, since Claire, you brought up synchronicity as an ongoing means of communication, I have experienced that myself with my late husband. And there's a new, if I can put in a plug for a new book that's coming out on synchronicities called A Playful Universe, that has lots of stories about that. And I have a chapter that describes 3 different synchronistic communications.
This is a good sign that we find some headwind here. This
You hit a nerve.
Yes, yes, yes. We have relevance, you know. I was going to go to another question here. Marta Maria de Cavallo Rodriguez. Sorry about that. I messed up the name here. But it's relating to you, Claire. I don't know if you see it in the chat. It's about a program called Medium, where people are young men invited to explain about famous people who have died. And it's she feels that there's a place in the brain that is scientifically proven to be the connection point to the spiritual world. If I can jump in, just I know so far what I have found in my readings, and I may be wrong, but there is no such place as yet to be identified. There are claims, but there's no conclusive evidence for one place where spiritual connects. Do you have any other comment on that? Maybe anybody?
I have read about research trying to see if there is a physical connecting point. And some research has been done with nuns who have a very active prayer life, as well as meditators. And they have found scientifically that certain parts of the brain do light up when in this state of consciousness, whether it's deep prayer or meditation, when one is in contact with another dimension. So I think that with time, there will be physical evidence. There is already on an experimental basis, but I think it will become commonplace.
All right. Anybody else? No. Okay. There are more questions than I can we can possibly cover here. That's exciting. While we just have a minute or two left here, maybe I'm going to invite the chairman of UPF International to say a few words. Dr. Michael Jenkins, if that's okay with you. Dr. Jenkins, just a comment here to help us along.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Berg. That was a wonderful program. I'm very uplifted. I do believe that consciousness goes beyond the material. I do believe we never die. I do believe that we remain as human beings in the spirit. And it's just wonderful to discuss these things. Laurel, thank you so much. And also to Tobias And Claire, what an exciting program. Thank you, Dr. Berg. There are some breakthrough scientists starting to advocate that there is, evidence more and more, even from the scientific perspective, that life goes on. So there's an organization called the HJ, International Federation for the Environmental Protection. Really great thing. And they got a magazine called Earth and I, but they are doing science conferences with that idea. Where is God beyond science or through science? So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I've known her for years, so I can say she's really helpful to so many people from every faith background, every community. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jenkins. Thank you for popping up here with us. The time is kind of getting towards the end here, and we might. But before we officially stop the recording, I would maybe invite each of the panelists to, make some statements or hopeful statements, hopefully, or some other prognosis or concluding remarks or comment on what has been said. And then if you like, we could stop the recording and continue a few minutes over that with those who like to stay on. But we start, if you can start in the order of speakers. So Tobias, would you like to say something here, concluding remarks, please?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for this webinar. It was really interesting what Laurel and Claire shared and all the questions from the audience. And it gives me a lot of hope to hear all this, because to me, this points to that, the evidence against this materialistic paradigm is really starting to get overwhelming. It's very difficult to defend the materialistic position now. And I see so many signs of, Laurel referenced Thomas Kuhn and paradigm shift. My experience in academia is that there are a lot of tendencies that we are actually living through a paradigm shift. And I think it's really important for the future for so many reasons. And a lot of the crises we go through today stem from how we relate to the world and ourselves, our worldview, really. So I think it's really important, but change is happening. So it's exciting times. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Tobias. Okay, Laurel.
Thank you. I just echoing what Tobias just said so beautifully. I agree. And Kuhn also said, I think that paradigm shifts take 800 years or something like that. But here's another hopeful note. That can't be true anymore, right? We can share information so quickly. I think that this is how we hasten a paradigm shift, hopefully in time for humans to stop being our biggest existential threat. And just being here is part of that. I've made a joke before, my goal with my academic career that's really just starting since I'm a PhD candidate is to make myself obsolete through consciousness education, like to shift everyone so that, oh, well, duh, yeah, everybody knows that. That's what I'm hoping for. And soon generations are going to be hacked again. No. Okay, we got it.
Yeah. Okay. I hope we didn't put you off there, Laurel. Did you have anything? Oh, he's coming again. Okay. Okay.
Where's that come?
EJ, can you eliminate this guy? JJ doesn't belong to our program here. He may be an alien. I don't know. As we go through this, let me just, before Claire, I just want to put a link in the chat. We talked about post-material science, and it's actually a manifesto for post-material science. And I put the link in the chat if you want to read about it. And that site, opensciences.org, has lots of information in this area, lots and lots and lots. You can spend months reading it. So, but that may be of interest. Now, Claire, would you like to share something with us, please?
Well, I'm just delighted to see the people that are much younger than I am. I'm getting closer and closer every day to going into the spirit world. And I see that they'll be around for a long time to translate these realities into a language that the material world can understand and digest. It's very exciting to see how mainstream academia is exciting to see how this is very interesting, isn't it?
He must doing great. Yeah.
Yes. Well, I'm just delighted that the younger generation is exploring and that they're being funded to do so. So that's pretty exciting.
Thank you. Thank you, Claire. Wow, this guy, he's persistent. I don't know who he is or why he can get in here, but it's interesting. Spiritual world, whether we want it or not, is interfering in our activities. You might think we are right on the Zoom program, but here it comes, here it goes. And you might yourself, anybody in the audience, might get an inspiration of some type. From what kind of spirit world is it coming? I don't know. The spirit world, my understanding is, has many different nooks and crannies. So it may be a good idea or maybe a really terrible idea. But anyway, we'll see. Thank you.
Warfare is always a terrible idea.
Yeah, most likely. Yeah, thank you, Claire. I think we are at the 1 hour mark, and maybe we can stop the live streaming and hope that some of you in the audience would log on next week. Every Tuesday, we have a program on some aspect of this series of UPF, or how to make peace, how to find universal values and apply them in our lives. So on behalf of UPF and IAAP, I want to thank you for spending this time with us to explore. Thank you so much. And for those of you who want to stay on, I don't know if we can go through the questions, but except for JJ, who barged in here, we maybe can have maybe 1 or 2 questions. Who could unmute yourself and share live, because I don't know who's going to be on or not from this crew. And also Laurel put in a link here to the Scientific and Medical Network, is also a wonderful resource. There are actually quite a few groups out there who have been at this for a while. IONS is another one. International Organization for Noetic Sciences is one that's kind of in the wings here, and there are others too. I live in Phoenix, Arizona, of all places, and here is going to be a conference that I think is like the 10th annual conference of near-death experiences coming up in a month. And that's a mind opener. Yes, I haven't had one of those other than close calls driving, but that doesn't qualify. So, but anyway, it may be could be interesting for you if you want to find out, research a little bit on your own. Okay, did we have anybody who wants to unmute and make a comment, or are we all good? Is it too many questions already bubbling in your mind? Pierre Beauregard. Okay, thank you for raising your hand.
Yes, Claire mentioned something about research on nuns. That was in this book, The Spiritual Brain by Mario Beauregard, a colleague of Gary Schwartz and Marjorie Walcott, who are coming out with that book that was mentioned. And I remember Mario Beauregard mentioning that it was only older scientists that had the courage to come out in support of post-materialism because they weren't too worried about their career. So to see young people coming out shows me that there's tremendous hope that the world is truly changing. So thank you so much for bringing up these two brilliant young scientists.
Yes, thank you, Pierre. I agree. It's for as an organizer, and I am so glad to have Tobias and Laurel with us. And I found that either somebody who is kind of a little bit on the fringe before academic career is willing to come, or somebody who has 200 or 300 published peer-reviewed papers under the belt is willing to come if they are still in academe, or somebody who has private employment outside of universities. So as a reference, it doesn't bode good for a traditional education as such. So Tobias is going to a school that is not so to say an Ivy League school in status, but it's pioneering in a sense studies in this field what we have been talking about. Is that correct, Tobias?
Yeah, and also thank you for that comment. So I could just begin by sharing that 1 year ago, a little over 1 year ago, I was in a traditional PhD program, and my supervisor told me the same thing when I brought my questions to him, that you can deal with that when you're retired, but now focus on getting your career going and getting yourself to MIT, and then come back and get your faculty position. But I just couldn't continue that path because of I think how destructive it is to force yourself into this kind of academic system that has, I think, very little value to other people other than my own career. So there I found this wonderful place, the California Institute of Integral Studies, the Philosophy, Cosmology, and Consciousness PhD program. And I can highly recommend the faculty there. I've learned a lot of the ideas that I share today, I've learned from them and been very inspired by them. And yes, they are still not, it's not an Ivy League school, but I think what they're doing is really, really important. So I'm so grateful to have found that.
Thank you, Tobias. Before we get to Diane here, she raised her hand. Maybe a comment from Laurel. You put a lot of links in the, or other people put links also in the chat here for other resources. She's in a, I wouldn't say competitive university, Toronto, but they have funded her partially, or she's there and pursuing this research, so to say, outside of traditional views still, and I have to say that's good. That's good. So kudos to them and kudos to you to take the step out. Thank you.
Thanks, Staffan. Actually, OISE is the educational school, the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education at University of Toronto, and it is a quite highly regarded educational program.
Oh yeah, I didn't mean to denigrate.
No, it's okay. It's both traditional and alternative in its approaches. So it's got a lot going on.
Interesting.
Yeah, it talks a lot about self-confidence. They can do this. Yeah, very good. Diane Hickler, you raised your hand. Do you have a comment, please?
Yes. First, I want to say my husband is not in spiritual world. That's Kelly Coriel, who's using my link. He's very much alive and right now is visiting France. But there's another thing about past lives. I don't go along with past lives, but many people talk about that. So that would be an interesting thing to try to understand why people say they lived before. I listen to it, it's great to hear, but it's just something I can't wrap my mind around.
Yeah.
I don't know if Claire has something to say, or it's another topic for another time.
Well, I work a lot with people who are convinced that reincarnation is a reality. And I am of the opinion that there is a phenomena called returning resurrection that in many respects appears to be reincarnation. When the consciousness of a discarnate person is imprinted on somebody who is still in their physical lifetime, it can appear to be a memory of a previous life. It is a memory of a previous life, but not necessarily one that I personally have lived. That someone is resolving unfinished business through me. They could have a common mission, or they could be a relative. And this was something that I studied in the Divine Principle, the teaching of Reverend Sun Myung Moon. And also an old out-of-print book. I've got a copy right here. I found this on, oh, of course, it's going to be backwards because of the camera.
No,
It's Arthur Ford, Unknown But Known. It's from the 60s. And his spirit control explains quite clearly the process of return resurrection when a question is asked about reincarnation. The traditional theory answers a lot of questions, the idea of reincarnation, but it raises many more. But he was a very well-known and highly respected medium. Arthur Ford was active in the 60s, and his spirit control explained that phenomena, I think, pretty effectively.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, you're right, Diane. That would be a topic for a bigger discussion, I'm sure. Okay, to just finish us up, I think one more question. Dr. Michael, Michael Kiley, you have your hand up. This may be the last question before we close up. Would you?
This is for Claire. Claire, we certainly hear about your work and know you from a long time ago and value your contribution. One of your comments suggests is that as a couple, we should begin to prepare now for the eventuality, our destiny to each of us to enter into the spiritual world. And we would love to be able to communicate with each other during that time in which one of us is on earth and the other in the spirit world. So how can we best prepare for that? How can we begin to practice the expression of our love across the veil?
I think by working on it here, practice your love substantially and learn, while you're both in the physical world, learn to really listen to each other, not just the physical words, but listen from the heart, learn to hear each other, because the spirit world communicates through the heart. It's not, sometimes if they really need to get your attention, you might hear words, but that's like slamming a door. They usually will impress something on your heart. So learn to listen to each other from the heart. Practice. And as I said to, I believe it was Kelly, yeah, just practice listening. And that's something you can do while you're both in the physical.
Wonderful. Thank you, Claire.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Kiley. And thank you very much to our panel. I know that we are far away and you clap your hands. It's not that audible, but at least let's make an attempt, huh? Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for doing this. Much
Well,
appreciated.
thank you so much for the opportunity and for coming. And this was just really uplifting and wonderful. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. And much success in your future work. We appreciate you very much. And thank you for our audience to staying on here. And you must be so interested in this. So look out for these 3 people. If you find them online, look at what they are saying and give them some thumbs up if they need. Okay. God bless you. Thank you so much. Appreciate
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
it.